Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started. This is our September 24th council session, and we will begin with an invocation by Rabbi Abi Sharovsky from the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington. Please stand if you're able.
Good morning. Creator of us all, I thank you for this new day and new opportunity to bring change to our community and our world. May the people assembled here for this session of the Montgomery County Council carry out their obligations to this community with wisdom, compassion, and strength. May their words and actions come from a place of moral and ethical obligation and a respect for justice. Thank you, Creator, for bringing us to this moment and instilling wisdom in those who lead. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. On to general business. Are there any announcements, Ms. Lauer?
Yes, we just have one reminder for the community that we have the deadline for applications for the Merit System Protection Board is Friday, September 25th at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we also have distributed the minutes of September 4th and also the minutes of the closed session from September 4th as well. Are there any changes, edits? Hearing none, those are adopted. Item 2 is consent calendar. I need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Katz, second by Councilmember Reamer. Okay, I don't see any lights. So all those in favor in adopting the consent calendar, please raise your hand. That is unanimous among those present. Great, so now we're going to move on to item number 3, and this is a confirmation of the county executive's appointee Director, Montgomery County Public Libraries, Ms. Anita Vassallo. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Jawando has moved, and second by Councilmember Katz. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Council President, and good morning, Ms. Vassallo. It's good to see you in the audience. I'm happy to see the acting title being removed today from your title. For more than 2 years, Ms. Vassallo has been a proven leader in that acting role. Beginning her career with the Montgomery County Libraries as a clerk, Ms. Vassallo has worked her way up the ladder, serving more than 45 years at many different library branches and positions throughout the county. As lead for libraries, I met with Anita earlier this year and shared with her my idea of hosting a library listening tour across all of our 21 public libraries, including our facility at the Clarksburg Jail. She was enthusiastic about the idea and has joined me for most of our community conversations, including our most recent one last night at Chevy Chase Public Library. And we were also joined by Councilmember Friedson. These events have fostered robust conversation with library patrons on issues that have ranged from programmatic concerns to access to world language materials and the need to enhance and create comforts that our libraries provide for our community members. On the public policy side, I'm curious to see how our library system measures up to other jurisdictions and what we can do now to plan for the future of Montgomery County Libraries. We recently added a project to the Office of Legislative Oversight's work plan to examine the future of our county library system to see how we can grow and become even better than we already are. And I know Ms. Vassallo is with me on that work, and her experience and leadership will help get us there as the director. So it's with enthusiasm that I make the motion, and I'm looking forward to my colleagues supporting you, and we all look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jawando. I don't see any other lights, but I think that we had a really wonderful conversation. And of course, we have engaged in many conversations in your capacity as acting, and really are very impressed with what you have done so far and your service thus far and what you will continue to do. So we're very excited to be able to take this vote. So with that, all those in favor of appointing Ms. Vassallo, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous among those present. Congratulations. Great. All right, so we're going to jump around a little bit to item number 7, actually, and this is introduction of bills. We have Bill 30-19, Human Rights and Civil Liberties, Race Discrimination, Protective Hairstyles, the Crown Act. Co-lead sponsors are Councilmember Jawando and myself. Co-sponsors are Councilmember Reamer and Hucker. There's a public hearing scheduled for October 15th, 2019 at 1:30 p.m. Councilmember Joando.
Thank you, Council President. I want to also thank you for co-sponsoring this legislation and co-leading this legislation, excuse me. And I want to thank my colleagues, Council Members Reamer and Hucker and Albornoz for also co-sponsoring the legislation. Some people have asked me why we introduced this legislation and don't quite understand why we're talking about hair in 2019. Well, the fact is that hair discrimination is an offshoot of racial discrimination and prejudice that we are all committed to exposing and eradicating. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Council President for her leadership on our racial equity work in the bill that was introduced last week. But there's also a very personal reason that I'm introducing this bill today. Hearing my littlest daughter, 5 years old, ask me why her hair isn't straight like the other little girls at school, and saying that she thought it would be better if it was. The goal of Bill 3019, the Crown Act, is to ultimately end race-based discrimination based on hair and eradicate the notion that professional and appropriate hairstyles are coded to only really mean white standards of grooming and beauty. Here in Montgomery County, we are proud to stand up and protect people who would be discriminated against because of their hairstyle, because it doesn't conform to these narrow standards. Those are standards that are unfairly and unjustly applied at the workplace, and these standards are applied at a very early age, in the classroom, through what kids see and hear on TV, in dress codes, and with coded language, like clean and neat. This includes men as well as women. It covers everything from locks, braids, bantu knots, fades, afros, twists, rust-colored fros, you name it. In communities of color, hairstyle is inherently connected to racial identity. And we have seen discrimination arise because of the connection of identity with people of color in their hair. And these outdated standards have been unfairly and unjustly used as a weapon to discriminate against people of color. That must end. And it will end here in Montgomery County with the passage of the Crown Act. This bill defines what hair types are covered under the definition of protected hairstyles in Section 27-6 of the Human Rights and Civil Liberties of our Code. It will prohibit discrimination based on certain natural hairstyles and amend the county's laws regarding discrimination. In short, that means anyone who feels discriminated against because of their hairstyle has the ability to file a civil lawsuit and seek action through the county's Office of Civil Rights. That means no matter where the discrimination occurs, at the job site, in a taxi, applying for accommodations, you have the right to be protected against discrimination based on your appearance. This is intensely personal, as I've mentioned, as I'm sure it is for many of my colleagues, and I know it is for my co-lead sponsor. It means that my 3 little girls, my beautiful wife, all of whom have natural hairstyles as of today, and my son, if he wants to rock a fro or cornrows like I did when I was 19, are assured, I'm going to try to find a picture too, but I don't know, are assured the protection that they will not suffer discrimination in hiring or other practices simply because of their hair, their beautiful, braided, twisted, natural hair. Their hair is beautiful, and it's part of their identity as Americans, and with every right due to them. Wearing your natural hair shouldn't have to be a revolutionary act, but for people of color who are often asked to conform to a standard that does not recognize their intrinsic value and sees their humanity, it often is. Societal norms and corporate grooming policies unfairly impact people of color, particularly women. There are more than 200,000 Black and Hispanic women and girls here in Montgomery County. In this community, we often talk about our great diversity and we embrace it, and we know that it has a positive impact on our culture and our economy. So this is a great step today that we can make sure that we are true to our founding creed here in Montgomery County. Similar bills have passed at the state level in California and New York, and other bills have been introduced in Wisconsin, Kentucky, New Jersey, and Illinois, among other states. Montgomery County today will become the first local jurisdiction to introduce such legislation, and I'm hopeful that these bills will pass in other states and jurisdictions because we often do lead here in Montgomery County. So let's stand up and pass the Crown Act. Let's do it for our daughters and our sons so that they can live out their own best selves. No shaming, no conforming, just perfectly, divinely created selves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Albornoz.
I'm honored and happy to sign on as a co-sponsor of this bill and appreciate our co-lead sponsors for leading this effort.
Councilmember Glass.
I too would like to be a co-sponsor.
Thank you. I do want to also acknowledge that this particular piece of legislation, when Councilmember Joando mentioned it to me, it was funny because I had already begun to work on this and wanted to reach out to my colleagues. It is extraordinarily interesting to have to realize that this issue of wearing your hair naturally actually is a problem for so many people because of those kinds of perceptions and standards that are assigned to a certain group of people. And I know that for myself specifically, you know, having raised two very amazing young Afro-Latina women who started in the workforce, in the corporate world, and made a conscious decision to wear their hair natural, and having to actually share with them and hear them about what that means, and how you have to make decisions about, you know, strategically, if you're going to go on vacation, what do you do? If you're going to go into the workforce, what do you do, et cetera. And it's, I think, wonderful that at least we're finally beginning to have these conversations openly. I think it's wonderful to acknowledge that for many, especially young women, but also men, this decision is, it's quite an extraordinary, pivotal, central issue. And also the fact that, you know, why do you have to necessarily feel like you are forced to have to put into your body all these chemicals because that's what's accepted. I believe that, especially when we talk about choice, that truly we should be accepting of choice. If you want to wear your hair straight, great. If you want to wear it, you know, curly, awesome. If you want to wear it bantu knots, that's great too. You know, if you want to wear it in braids, whatever it is, I think if we're going to talk about choice, then we need to mean it. And so this is why, you know, when I started tracking all these different legislations around the country, and we had a summer fellow who actually also mentioned this particular summer as we were having a conversation, it occurred to me that, wow, you know, yeah, we have to do this. So I really appreciate your leadership, Councilmember Joando, and hope that this just sends an extraordinary message to so many young women and young men, or whoever you are, whatever age spectrum, that it's okay, that whatever is growing out of your head is beautiful, is accepted, and that you can, you know, be proud of your heritage and your ethnicity and who you are. So. So this is really great. I even haven't had a chance to tell my daughters that we're introducing this, and I'm going to text them and let them know, and I'm sure they'll be super excited. All right, Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you, Councilmember Joando, for introducing the legislation. I was really pleased to co-sponsor as well. I think we need to do anything that we can to reduce the pressure to conform to particular standards of what is professional appearance, and allow people to make decisions about how they want to appear and be judged on their skills and their knowledge and their capability and the experience that they bring to the job. And you know, this legislation is pushing toward a future where that is the case, and people are free to wear their hair or make different choices about their attire that reflect who they are, and without judgment about how that expresses their talent and their qualifications for the job.
Awesome. Great. All right. So now we're on to item 7B, Bill 31-19, Health and Sanitation, Electronic Cigarettes, Distribution, Use, and Possession. Co-lead sponsors are Councilmember Hucker and Albornoz. There's a public hearing scheduled for November 5th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Madam President. I am pleased to introduce Bill 3119, a companion to the legislative package introduced by Councilmembers Albornoz and Rice last week, and I'm grateful to Councilmember Albornoz for adding his powerful HHS chair authority to this bill as well. The dangers, and I'm grateful to Ms. Myhill for drafting it up. The dangers of e-cigarettes and other vaping products are well known. We had a lot of discussion of this last week. We see lots of tragic news from around the country every day. Like so many problems with new products and new drugs, our policymaking hasn't kept up with the technology. So today's Bill 3119 modernizes our code by updating our authority of our ABS tobacco inspectors, and it brings us into full compliance with new state law, which raises the legal age of purchase for vaping products from 18 to 21. This bill gives our county inspectors broader civil authority to crack down on underage sales of vaping products by retailers like convenience stores and gas stations, as well as other types of stores. There are even stores like teen clothing stores that are now seizing on the opportunity to sell vaping products as an additional source of income. So this bill gives our inspectors authority to walk into those stores, which they now don't have. The bill erroneously includes a clause that also allowed for enforcement on users, and that wasn't my intention, so I'm going to move to remove that in committee. But together with the recently introduced legislation last week and the ZTA, I think this bill fits into the whole package of continuing our mission to protect our teenagers from vaping products. So welcome your support. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Hooker. Councilmember Albornoz.
So I appreciate the full court press that we are moving forward to fully address this issue, and I really want to thank Councilmember Hooker and his team for putting forward what I think is another important step in ensuring the health and wellness of one of our most vulnerable populations, which is our children and youth. So happy to be co-lead on this and look forward to the committee discussion.
Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay. Councilmember Reamer.
I'll join the co-sponsor list, please.
All right. Councilmember Glass.
+1 from me as co-sponsor.
Councilmember Jawando.
+2 as a co-sponsor, please. Thank you.
+3 with Councilmember Navarro.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's counting.
All right. Okay. So item 8, this is the call of bills for final reading. Action. This is Bill 22-19, accessory dwelling units, licensing requirements amendments. Fed Committee recommends enactment with amendments. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you, Council President. All right, so this legislation addresses some issues that we identified as we were going through the process of our zoning policy process, but we could not include them in a zoning text amendment because they are issues that are in the legal code and they require legislation. So we had to put them in the parking lot, so to speak, and plan to introduce them later. Just wanted to be clear about that because there was some confusion as to whether we were revising the proposal that we previously passed. We're not revising this proposal at all. We are simply addressing some issues that are in a parallel code that we were not able to reach into with our previous zoning change. And so the elements of this bill, I think, are pretty well known, but the first and most controversial, I'm sure, is replacing the phrase accessory apartment with accessory dwelling unit. And that there's actually a reason for that. We're trying to be part of creating a national standard for the terminology. The second provision of it is to address the standards for minimum ceiling heights for basements and cellars. There's a point of clarification that Jeff will espouse here, but the basic issue is in an existing basement, in a basement, we want to allow the ceiling height to be as low as 6'8". But if there is a intrusion such as a duct or a beam, it could be 6'4". And we hope that will allow some homeowners in older houses to convert their basement units without having to excavate the basement, which would be fairly prohibitive, I'm sure, for most. So there was a little confusion about that. We were not intending to apply the 6'8" height to any other level of a house, strictly to the basement. And that is what the committee was recommending. Jeff, was there any other clarification needed?
Yeah, it's just that the 2018 International Building Code only allows 6'8" in a basement and doesn't allow it in stories above. What the ZTA, what the bill is addressing is what you define as habitable space. So it will not override the International Building Code when it comes to new construction, but if there is existing space of that height, which may include some buildings built before 1958, it would allow that to be habitable space.
Right. I think exactly. All right. Another element is requiring that the applicant for a license certify that they are indeed allowed to have a unit according to their common ownership associations. It is a reality that some HOAs or condo associations, I guess it would be really HOAs, don't allow their residents, to the homeowners, to have one. And then we have a provision in there around reporting so that we can just get a steady flow of information about the adoption of this type of housing. Was there another element of the legislation, Jeff?
Just to say that we don't want there to be any implication that the county will enforce an HOA's covenants, but just that we want to put the builder of the ADU on notice that there is an HOA, and the HOA on notice that there's an application for this. But it is not the implication that the county will enforce.
All right, so those are the main provisions of the legislation. I appreciate all of the effort that went into this from my colleagues, and I think the process of broadly legalizing accessory dwelling units has been a very helpful conversation about the county's approach to housing and our different ways that we can address the affordability problems that our residents are having. So that is our committee recommendation, and I appreciate my council colleagues' consideration.
Great. Okay, so I don't see any lights, so this is a roll call.
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Tawando?
Yes.
Mr. Tawando votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Reamer? Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Albornoz? Mr. Albornoz votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson? Yes. Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes. That is unanimous. Wonderful. So now we're going to have to take a recess because we're way ahead of our agenda. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'd like to be recorded in the affirmative for our consent calendar, as well as the appointment of Anita Vassallo as our Director of Libraries.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Rice. All right, so we'll come back at 11 o'clock.